Um, okay, sweet.
Oh, does
I
that work? Oh, did you hear that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I forgot to press the button. But yes, you're absolutely right because Blender, up until maybe 2 years ago, was basically like not a very useful program. It. I would say nowadays I'm very impressed by Blender. I think that what they've been able to do with it, open source and all these people putting all this stuff together to improve Blender has been incredible. Um, we have two guys on my team right now who like work exclusively in Blender. Like they don't even want to touch other programs. So if Blender's your jam, if you enjoy it, it's great.
right.
It's not so strict anymore. Things have changed a lot. Like once upon a time, you'd have you'd have teams where they didn't want to hear that you're not using the software. Like even though there's really no difference. Like at the end of the day, the model gets triangulated and exported and put into whatever engine you're using. So this whole keep it quads and you got to use Max or you got to use Maya. That that's really not accurate, And also, I've never been able to keep something quads ever, like purely quads. Even trying to sub D stuff, like there would still be weird triangles or like you never really want an Ngon, but you'd have triangles. You just hide them in the armpit or something, and like
Right.
it's not really a big deal. And also, if you're going to be making game art that's going to be triangulated in the engine itself, certain areas really it behooves you to triangulate it yourself because when things bake funny, you'll get some bake softwares because of the way the invisible edges work. You will get weird bake errors, and it's from the software guessing the triangulation. And unless you put it in there manually, you might get some goofy results. So I understand where some of these guys are coming from, because if you go to a studio, you're going to be working in a specific pipeline,
Mhm.
but unless you're working for a very small company that doesn't have the cash to give you your own seat of the software you like, um, you know, you shouldn't really have a problem. And even small companies, man, like they'll have the seats of the software,
Oh yeah.
So I've never
I
really, it's been a long time since I was denied a piece of software.
because I went and I got my perpetual license ZBrush. No longer, we'll figure that out, when I bought it, so I have it. So I'm like, okay, well, I have ZBrush in case someone's like, well, we don't have ZBrush here because it's expensive. It's like, well, I do, like I thought that
Yeah.
was a way of being like, yeah, that makes me more hireable or more, sought after. But now I'm like, everyone can get it. It's subscription based now, like, well, at least I have it, like
Mm-hmm.
I can make my own art. Like,
Yeah. And
um,
having your own copy of the software does open up other opportunities, because then you don't have to, then you can do freelance work and all of these things
mhm.
without any real issues. um, but yeah, if you're getting hired to make stuff at a studio, they will give you all the things you need. Maybe some of the weird fringe software you may have to provide on your own, like body paint, for example. Like if people still want to use body paint, that might not be something you can very easily get.
Okay.
But yeah, and then there are so many other pieces of software that do the same thing that eventually there'll be a copy of it somewhere. So I don't think that that's really that big a deal. I did work for a studio once upon a time in the early 2000s where they wouldn't buy us body paint, and we got, like, all the artists, we kind of try to present our case like, hey, the kind of art that we're doing, it would make it really good if we could have this piece of software. And the guy in charge, he was like, I think he said something like, if you can half the timeline, if buying this software will half the timeline, we'll get it for you. And we're all sitting there kind of like, well, that's not really how this works.
Right.
I mean, maybe we'll take a day off of it or something just because we don't have to keep going back and forth between the packages. But at the same, like, I can't make that guarantee. That's not really how this thing works. So
Right.
needless to say, we didn't get body paint at that studio, but
No,
shortly
yeah.
thereafter, 3D Coat in its early stages came out, and that was very inexpensive. So grabbing a copy of 3D Coat and using the paint software on that, sorted that issue out. But yeah,
Nice.
I think that these types of ideas are no longer really very common in the studio world.
And I think that's something, to you being in the industry, doing it right now, like hearing it from you is a very fresh perspective, because it's not to say that I believe my professors are out of touch, but it's like the last time they were in a studio was not, like 10 years ago, and
Yeah,
it changes so drastically.
yeah.
Briefly talking again about Blender, 2 years ago, I had a professor who was like dogged it, and now he's like, yeah, I don't mind it. You're like, like, but it's such a how things have like changed so much in just a short amount of time. It's even like everyone talks about Unreal 5, Nanite Mesh. What's poly count anymore? And you're like, that's cool, but like there's still a reason that we have to learn these things. You still have to learn
Oh
how to make a low
yes.
poly, because you're not going to make a 30 million poly sculpt of a character running around, or else that game is going to be 400 gigs and it's not going to be fun. Like
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
that's
you're
what
absolutely right.
uh I try to like at least, because I think that's been the hard problem too, because I jumped into such a high poly world on my own that now I'm learning low poly, or trying to.
Mhm.
And I'm going through baking right now, and I have to redo a project because I missed something where it's just, and that's where it's like, man, there's a lot, right? Sorry, not to get on a tangent. It was just like there's so much to this career field and everything that I'm like, got to stay on top of these things, got to do this while also, learning your trade in your own time.
Mhm.
Um, and on that, I guess, what what kind of tips and tricks would you say would help an aspiring, like not even just character artist, just to get into the games industry, like what should I be focusing on as far as moving forward with like my skill set? Like if I want to be like a character modeler sculptor, what things do I need to be doing at my level to make it better, other than like say speed sculpts or things like that? Like, is there anything it's like, yeah, and you really need to be aware of this, you really need to be doing this sort of things?
Uh, it's a good question, man. I would say that if I were trying to start today from
Mhm.
from scratch, the first thing I would do is be focused on finishing characters. Go all the way through. Speed sculpts are awesome, and they make for really cool presentation, and they make for very cool little time lapse videos and stuff that you can throw on your social media or ArtStation or what have you to get clicks and stuff, which is all good. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Right.
But ultimately, I would focus on taking a project from start to finish. I would look at a game that I wanted to work on, try to find all of the references that I could. So say I wanted to work on Overwatch.
Hmm.
I would go on online, find as much reference for Overwatch as I could, and then I would either design my own guy if I was that type of if I could draw that well or draft. If I couldn't, I would find a piece of concept art that I really liked that maybe was in the same world or same vibe, and I would try to hit it as close as possible. I would sculpt it as cleanly as I could, learn what I can, think about making a mesh that I would want to deliver. Then I
Hmm.
would focus on making a very animatable game model, showing your wireframe in your portfolio is always good, especially if you don't have any experience. Being able to show that you understand that, elbows need a certain amount of spans so that they won't collapse on each other. Shoulders, they need to be able to be built so that they can do all these rotations. That's very important stuff. That gets overlooked because now, like you were saying, a lot of people don't really think about poly count, but that's really only at like the bleeding edge of game development. Like if you're using Unreal 5 and your company is like a AAA company, then yeah, you're probably going to have like 60,000 triangle characters or something, but that's very few games. That's not really, and if you can make that level of work and you can get that job, then God bless you, more power to you.
Right.
But as an entry level guy, I wasn't working on those projects when I started. I was working on the games that I could match, and a lot of times that wasn't really, that wasn't Battlefield, that wasn't like
Right.
the top end. I was a newbie. I had my skill set in what it was, and I was able to get work that fit that level of work. So, find something you like, find a game studio that you like, look at their work, try to hit it as close as possible, and finish your model. Make sure it goes all the way through to the fully textured stage. If you can pose it, that's cool. Sometimes I pose stuff, sometimes I don't. I think it adds, if you can, even if you just drop the arms and kind of like make them stand a little different, I think that it's beneficial.
Okay.
Just for presentation's sake, but I'm not I'm not the guy to explain presentation. That's something I struggle with, just like, how do I think about it so much more like a crafts person. Like, here is the toy. I'm handing it to you. I'm handing the toy
Right.
to the animator, and then they're going to do all that cool stuff with it. I think about like the perfect cabinet. Is this cabinet, is it exactly how we need? Does the door open and close? Is all this good stuff? Okay, well, I'll let someone who, now that it's all set up, you can go play with it. So if you look at a lot of the work that I have on my portfolio, it's T-pose models, rendered as nicely as I can, but they're not like in action poses, or they're not like animating and breathing. Because if you go on ArtStation, like there are a lot of guys who are very talented who have those things on there. And if you can do that, it definitely adds to it. It can't hurt you unless it looks bad. Unless the animation looks bad, then it's not so great. But if it'll never hurt to put that little bit in there if you can. If you can't, focus on what you know. Make a nice model, render it out nicely, make a good texture, good surfaces, and make sure the UVs are clean and the wireframe looks animatable,
Right.
And that's what I would do. I would just bang out models one after the other because they take a long time. They every model you make, you will learn all sorts of things that you didn't know from the last one. And if you're creating finished work for your portfolio, one after the other, eventually you're going to get to the point where you're going to want to prune your old stuff. And, you don't need a ton of work in your portfolio really to get a job. You need like 3 or 4 like clean, presentable models. And if I'm hiring somebody and the resume comes in and I see their portfolio has something that looks like the work that I need, like, oh, this looks like the game I'm working on. Okay, the models are nice, textures are clean, edges look fine. Let's give this guy a call. Let's give him an art test, because that's almost invariably you're going to get some kind of test from a studio. And then you're going to have to factor that into your time frame. And that'll be your opportunity to really show your most current skill set, your most current ability to work in whatever the art test parameters happen to be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So kind of what I'm trying to do, I've started like 2 projects that it's hard with school. You know what I mean? It's like, oh man, I would love to spend all of my time finishing this character, but I'm in a hard surface class too, so we're learning how to do, hard surface modeling for bakes and things like that. That's taking time because I can't just knock that out. That's got to be focused. So like it's nice. It feels good to be reassured that's like, okay, you're not off the bat, you're not off the path. You were doing what you should be doing. Now you just got to get the time, not get the time, reallocate the time that I have in actually continue that line because I've reached out to an artist on ArtStation. I was like, hey, can I use your concept art to try to make this character? And they're like, absolutely, go ahead. And I was all about that. And then school started, and then it's like, oh well, I wish I want to finish that because it was like, sorry, I love this stuff, and I wish I had more time in the day.
Yeah,
And
absolutely, man.
um, I've told people like if I don't make it in the games industry and something happens, I will still sculpt and model and mess with stuff because it's fun. It's therapeutic in a way. It's just nice to be able to like, I'm just gonna sculpt this out and do this and stuff. And this has just been like, it's like, but what if you could do it for a living? And you're like, oh yeah, that'd
Mhm.
be great. Like,
Yeah.
so
And if the thing about the skill set is that it can be applied to other things. Like you don't necessarily have to work in games.
mhm,
There are many fields that these skill sets of being able to make sculptures, being able to make high poly models, being able to create like the architecture project you were talking about,
yeah.
the ability to know 3D and to apply it to different disciplines exists across the board. So I think it's one of those things that if you love it and you are good at it, then you can really make of it whatever you like. You
Mhm.
know, I've had opportunities to do all sorts of things like sculpt jewelry, for example, sculpt miniatures for print, sculpt let's see, what else was I doing? Strange, make molds, make the negatives of molds for 3D printing. Um, I have a buddy who uses a lot of 3D in After Effects. He does like, if you're watching the Super Bowl or what have you, all of those rotating things that show the names of the players and
Yeah.
all of that 3D stuff, someone's got to make it. So someone made all that. And if you have the skill set to do it and you're interested in it, you can make a very good living doing all sorts of things with this technology.
Oh yeah. Um, it, I guess it's just like that's the mecca though. You're like, because there's the joke we have in school. Just because you like video games doesn't mean you should make them.
Yeah.
There has to be a little bit of like you want to create, you want to do art, you want to do programming. You have to have that spark of like, I'm going to create things and I want to make them look good. While yes, you do have to have, I guess, a certain like love of games and what they mean to you. You can't just, well, I play them, so that means I should make
Yes.
them. You're like,
Yes.
no, no, no.
Yeah. You really need to enjoy it because it can be a brutal industry. It can be very long hours,
Mhm.
a lot of time at the machine, a lot of feedback, a lot of critique, and really kind of working on your ego. It can be tough for people to separate your work from you know not taking things personally in a job environment on your art is very challenging, especially as a young person. I remember struggling with basically disassociating from it, as far as like, okay, the feedback I'm getting is not a personal attack on me and my ability to make art. It's my everyone in this room is a talented artist. They have years of experience. The feedback that I'm getting is to improve me, is to improve the art, is to get a better final product. And that can be very challenging for people, especially artists who tend to be kind of a little more on the emotional side. You're a little more, you're a little more into it. Art's very personal experience for a lot of people. That is something that I think is very important to break yourself of as quickly as you can. Or else, you're going to have a much harder time, because it's already stressful to hit deadlines making art. It's already stressful to hit a quality bar making art. And then you're also getting feedback that is telling you, to make it different. It's challenging. It's very challenging, because that's a lot of stress and a lot of long hours. Even today, I work a lot of hours. A lot of it these days is mostly self-inflicted, just because I wanted to look a certain way. I always want to be trying to one up myself every time I make something.
Yeah.
But that doesn't come out of nowhere. The time doesn't, there's still 24 hours, and you gotta fit in all of the things in life too. So,
but I mean, that's still even reassuring too, because it's like, I've had, the games industry, it's long hours. It's like, hey man, I'm not trying to say that I'm not used to it, but like, you ever been on a 16 on the flight line where it's just like the plane has to get fixed and you're not leaving until it does? And it's just like, I would rather inflict a 16-hour day on me than to be told, but I know that deadlines happen, like, it's like, hey, we got to get these acetone. I mean, I've not done it, but like the thought of it is like, yeah, I mean, that's just a part of it. You kind of, but I think like what you don't hear is, like you said, no. What you want needs me to spend more time on it, because I'm not personally attached to this yet. Like, this isn't my quality of work. So yes, we did long hours because I put an extra 8 throughout the week, or an extra 10, 20 of my own time to get it to this point. So yeah, I did a 60, 70-hour week to get this to where it needs to be. Not everyone's going to do that. And that's even in school. Like, we had a teacher, he's like, I want you to spend 70 hours over 5 weeks on the sculpt. It's your final sculpt for our ZBrush class. Spend that time. People barely getting 42, 40 and stuff. And it's just like, and it shows, it shows that because you take a sculpt at 70 hours versus 40, you're like, well, that's me. It's like, yeah, but it's indicative of, like you said, it's a passion and everything. But then there's the other part, and maybe, you can relate to this too. It's like, you got to spend good time on it though, like, because you can bash your head against a wall for 70 hours and it not look good because you didn't get guidance or anything. And then that's wasted time. So that's where I think I'm here asking you questions. I'm telling you about me. No,
please. This is great. I prefer it to be more conversational anyway, because I don't want to just be like reading off my list of whatever's over here, No, you're right. And even when I was in school, that was very common. You would really be able to tell who wanted to be there and who didn't. And it was always really heartbreaking when someone who was exceptionally talented clearly showed that they weren't really putting a lot of work in, and it's like, it does show in the final product who has taken this as a discipline, and who has taken it as something that they just kind of like to do. Because there's a big difference. There's a big difference between like setting time aside and making it your focus, as opposed to like, oh, I happen to be good at art, so I have to go to college, I have to get a degree, I have to get a job, so let's do this. That is an unfortunately common attitude. And we're only human. Like, we have all our own issues, but that is going to hurt you. Really, it's going to hurt in the end if you're very talented and you can't get the discipline part down. And it's tough because like, life happens. You got a million things going on. You have all of your classes, your other classes that you got to worry about, and all these things. but scheduling time and putting it in and making it into a discipline is the only way I think that will produce real results in a decent amount of time. Because you're still like, what do they say? You got to be working for 10,000 hours to be a master. I mean, I've worked over 10,000 hours and I don't feel like a master, like I'm still learning things and I'm still
Oh
getting
yeah.
better. And with social media, it's great because you can see so much other work, but it's also kind of rough because you got all these other people out there who are like wicked good, and you're comparing yourself to them. You can't help it because you're both making sort of the same thing. So it can be overwhelming, but ultimately, I think that the best course of action is to just schedule some time to work on it, put in a good couple of hours when you can, and just grind on it, and don't beat yourself up. That's another thing,
Oh yeah.
like don't beat yourself up about if it doesn't look as good as you want it to, because you will get there eventually if you don't give up. um, and yeah, it definitely shows, when you see somebody who put in 40 hours versus someone put in 70, in a college environment or school environment or class or whatever. um, yeah,
Yeah.
there's no way to, you get faster at things when you get better over time. But
Right.
at this point in a person's career, at the early stages, I think, like, just use that time as much as you can, and really put the time in. um and remember, like you were saying, like you worked on planes and stuff and they had it fly, and
Right.
that's way higher level than making a deliverable for a game, because some guy who you may be friends with is flying that thing. So there's like a very
Right.
real immediate, like, if I didn't put it together right in this time frame, that guy could wind up in the water, and you don't want that.
No,
It's
not
nowhere
at all.
near as intense in video games, but you may have a producer breathing down your throat like, why isn't this done? Because they're
Right.
they're panicking because it doesn't fit into their sheet and other people are waiting for you. No one's crashing, hopefully, but it you do sort of have to take it that seriously. Other people are relying on you. You have a responsibility to get it in and to get it done. And as much as I'm giving you this advice, I'm giving this advice to myself, because I still am at like the edge when it comes to delivering things sometimes, because maybe I put in some extra time, or I didn't put in enough time in the right places, and now I'm making up for it. So I'm up really late trying to get it in, at that deadline, at that cliff, um, for whatever reason.
I, because I totally am with you about like the human aspect of it. It's like, but and you even said it too, because there's like two things that I was like, I'm glad you said that because it resonated with me about how like even if you fail right now, don't beat yourself up because you're gonna get it. You're gonna get there. There's a project that I'm working on right now that we're allowed to resubmit, and I'm gonna basically redo the whole thing this week because somewhere in the pipeline of making it, I don't know what blew up on it. And I'm just like, you know what? We're going to take the points we got right now and we're just going to redo it. And we're not going to sit there and fail on this. Like it's not something that, it's like, where did you mess up? Well, I don't know. Like, so get rid of the whole damn tire and we're going to remake the tire. Like, but I was feeling a little beat up last night because like we had to turn it in. It wasn't up to par for me. It wasn't good, but I had to turn it in so I could get a chance to work on it and resubmit it because it's like I have to learn from this. Like this isn't something that like because I know people who will do that. They'll just fail on a project and then the next project they fail and they fail, they fail, they fail. It's like
Mhm.
no, 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 no. If this is where I trip, I'm getting up before the next trip. And if that means I don't play games this week, I don't work on personal projects, and I just get this done between the other work, it's like that's what I got to do. And it's I'm glad you said that because it's like, oh, cool. I feel validated and not feeling like shit. Like
Yeah, yeah,
um, but also just how the long hours and stuff, it's like it is that personal bar of like even if oh man, an emergency came up or like, hey, I went and hung out with friends because I had to get away from the screen for like X amount of hours. Like if you make it up on your time and you make it up for you, and you get the job done, you're doing it right. I guess it's just like, okay, cool. Like there's some pressure because like, man, I don't know who can be a machine in this career field. Like I've never seen anyone just firing on all cylinders at all times, making anything, and even in college, right? Like everyone slips up, everyone allocates hours. I got this guy, he's a good friend of mine, produces phenomenal work. But man, if he ain't every single time 11:59 turning it in and going, oh, this is really tough. And I'm like, bro, like it looks great, but like, like, did you wait until today to do it or something?
And
So,
he probably did. He probably did. But some things, so some people really do work best under pressure.
mhm,
Some people really can only, I wouldn't say can only, but I think some people really do need the gun to their head to get things done, and then that's where they actually engage. Um, yeah, so it's different for everybody.
oh yeah.
I know I do some of my best work when I have no time to do it, when it's like, you want to change, oh Lord, like, uh, okay, I'll do it. And then I just grind for 30 hours and then I get it done and then I go to sleep. And it's super unhealthy. I don't recommend it. I think it's terrible, but I mean, sometimes that's how it goes. And ultimately, if you can get your discipline together before things like that happen, you'll probably be a lot healthier. Because you said something earlier. You said just now, you don't know anybody who's like firing on all cylinders all the time, and that's true. It is a burnout. Like, you get burnt out so fast, just cranking these things out one after another, one after another, after another. So finding a healthy balance of, this is the hours that I work, and then I'm going to put in as much work as I can in these hours, and then I'm going to focus on other aspects of my life out when that time is not allotted. I think
Mhm.
that's extremely important, as well as all the other aspects. There's so many aspects of life that are really, really, really important, like nutrition, getting enough sleep, having an exercise regimen, having a schedule, having these things that are holistically good for you.
Mhm.
That way, you are as healthy as you can when you're going to sit down in front of this glowing box and try to make art as long as you can, and be focused and be rested and good, because it's a marathon. Like, if you want to do this a long time, like I think this is year 17 for me, you need to start. You do the earlier you start having a healthy schedule with healthy habits, and scheduling breaks, scheduling vacations where you're like, okay, for 2 weeks, I'm not going to work on this stuff. I'm going to get as much work as I can, do a deadline, hit it, feel good, feel accomplished, then give myself some time off, and then come back fresh. That's how you keep it going, and you don't burn yourself out. And I'm not good at that. Like, I'm not good at not burning myself out. You know, I remember when I was early in my career, I would almost sleep under my desk sometimes. Like, I'd be in the studio all the time because I didn't think I deserved to be there yet. I was some fresh-faced kid. I was talented enough, I suppose, to get the job, but once you're next to people who are like way better than you realize that other people may not be able to see the difference immediately between the two work, people without the trained eye, but you can, and your bosses can, and other people can. And I always wanted to prove myself. I always wanted to be like, I know I can do this. And it took me a long time to get to the confidence level where I accepted that I can do it. I'm at the level I can do it. And the differences in quality bar that I see and that other people might see, the gap has closed to the point where, like, is that really is it really a huge difference? Like, we're talking about percentage differences because you're a trained artist and you see things that other people don't see. And also something that I am only recently very, trying to apply to my own work and my own management style is, it, what's the percentage difference? Like, what is really the difference? Like, do we focus on this little piece that isn't sculpted right? Or do we zoom back out, look at the whole thing holistically and find the major ways to improve it, and not just focus in on like, man, those shoelaces are really messy, like, or you sculpted this all goofy, but it's almost inconsequential to the final product because only you have been staring at this piece of art for 80 hours. When you show it to somebody, a lot of times it's the first time they're ever seeing it. You see all your mistakes, they just see what you've presented them, So when I work on things, I try to remember that, I try to keep in mind that like, I see all the things that I don't like about it, but what do my peers see who are critiquing the work? What do my bosses see who are going to give me feedback? And then when I'm accepting other people's work that I need to give feedback and critique and try to plus one in whatever way I can, whether it's outsourcing or, some younger artist or some even a peer artist, who's got more experience than me, I'm going to give them some feedback that I think is going to holistically improve. Not so much like getting in on like that, oh, well, that belt buckle thing that you made there is like really sloppy or something. It's like, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but is it really important? Like to making it like the best it can be. I think stepping back is almost always like the best move, from your own work, from other people's work, from your career as a whole, because it is it's a marathon. Your first studio job is probably going to be really intense. And then when you're at your third or fourth studio job, you can step back and see kind of like, oh man, that's how I handled that one. That's how I handled that one. I've learned this and I've applied that. You're 32, so you've done things like this. So it's probably stuff you already understand. But if I were talking to your class in general, or just any artist starting, is like, you don't know what you don't know yet. It's going to be a long haul if you really want to do it. You can make it a long haul. Like I said, this is like year 17 for me. Never had any thought that I'd be doing that. That's not really, that wasn't really in my projections. So yes, it's, you don't know what you don't know yet, and just take one thing at a time.
I preach this to a lot of my friends because being the elder, for my classmates, my peers and stuff, like they're all 20, 21 babies, like, I'm like, never stop learning. The moment that you tell yourself that you know everything and you're done learning, just go in the woods and lay down and don't come back.
Excuse me one second. I think I believe that is the guy. So, while we were on pause, you mentioned something about apartment life. And, up until COVID, I would say, yes, you're probably going to want to stick with apartments. But nowadays, everybody works online now. So you can really work from wherever you like. No one knows what the future holds when it comes to places opening back up and going in person and all these things. And there is a huge benefit to being able to be right next to somebody you're working with. No lie at all. But one of the beautiful things I will say about this whole situation is that you can live in a house. Like if you got the opportunity to purchase a house near your family or near wherever place you like, it's not the detriment that it once was. It's
Mhm.
not like, oh, well, now I need to move to LA. Well, now I need to move to DC. Now I need to move to Austin. Like
Right.
it was pretty rough. Like I'm from New York City.
Hmm.
When I was 17, I went to LA
Okay.
to go to school. I lived and worked in LA for about 6 years. And then my next job was in Washington, DC. So I threw all my apartment in my Ford Taurus and I drove 3,000 miles across the country. And
Right.
then I lived in DC for a little while. And then my next job was in Austin, Texas. So I picked up all my stuff again and moved to Austin, Texas, and then it was San Francisco and then it was Seattle. Like, you
Whew.
know, it it was great in some ways, but in others it was pretty brutal.
Oh yeah.
It had its bonuses, but it also had its detriments. And if being a homeowner and these things are something that you're very interested in, I don't blame you. I think that long-term equity is important, and putting your money in an actual something that is real, that you live in, is very good.
Right.
Um, and a lot of the places where there is big tech, it is not very affordable.
Oh no.
It's
Oh
Yeah,
man.
like if you were living, like you said, between San Francisco and Sacramento. I mean, when I lived in San Francisco, every year I moved one city south down the peninsula because of how much more expensive it got. I started there maybe 2011 or so,
Hmm.
and my apartment was like 1650. And then every year they wanted to raise it to the point where it was cheaper to just move one city south. And
Man.
that's how I did for like 6 years. I just kept moving until I was damn near in San Jose. So some of these
Oof.
places they're just really not affordable.
No, not at
Um,
all.
yeah, it's very challenging in that regard. So because you can get a job
Mhm.
remotely and live in a relatively inexpensive place, um, you know, the opportunities to purchase something or to have flexibility are more so now than they ever have been, really. Um,
Right.
Now, going forward, I have no idea what the future is going to be like when people are finally over this whole thing, and they're like, okay, well, let's get back into the studio, or like, oh, we don't want so much of this remote stuff. Like maybe that'll be an issue at some point if you purchase a home in the Midwest. But you know, at this point, I really don't want to move across the country again. Like I like where I'm where with you. I want some equity. So maybe one of these days.
Right. I like being close to family,
Yes,
but
I
I
think
think
that is very important.
my time in the military also showed me that, like, because I'm 3 hours from them now, and I still feel like I see them the amount of time that I see them when I was in the Air Force. Like, it's like
Mhm.
I said, I love you guys, close to you now. I can drive to you, but we don't usually get together except for like on, major points
Yeah,
during
major
the day.
holidays and stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the pandemic has been a thing with that and stuff, and schools kind of locked that down. Like, I've got one class on Zoom, but I have some classes in person, mostly, major classes. So I'm able to go talk to the professors and stuff, which is like, because when it's all on Zoom, it's like, I'm in my room. I don't know if I'm doing this right or wrong. Like,
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
come to my computer, man, and just kind of show me, like, hey, what am I missing? Because that's that's where I think a lot of how I grow and how I learn. I'll do everything in my power to get to do something. If I'm not understanding, I am definitely not the kind of person who doesn't ask for help. Like, I'm like,
Mhm.
hey, what's up? What did I do wrong? And of course they're like, well, did you Google it? Did you do this? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because they get the person. The moment they run into a problem, they run right to them. Hey, fix. Hey, I don't know what I did wrong. It's like, well, did you try to fix it? And it's just like, yeah. Well, they say no because they just like, well, I didn't. And I'm over here on hour 5 troubleshooting a project, that I'm like, why isn't it doing the thing? They're like, oh, it's just this box. I'm like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
very hands-on learning, I guess. Like, I think that's what I've learned growing up in military and everything like that. Show me like legit how to do the thing, then let me try it and then show me again, and I'll learn it. But definitely, like, Oh man, it's
I
just
learn
it's
visually as well, so
oh
I'm
yeah.
right there with you. I want someone to just push the button for, like, come over and be like, all right, what am I doing wrong? Show me. And then when I see
Right.
them do it, I'm like, okay, I can recreate that, and I can
Yeah.
understand it. But yeah, yeah, that is something that is a big negative with this whole remote learning, remote working thing. You don't have that same tactile, like immediate feedback that,
Mhm.
for example, the pit that I used to work in when we were over at high res, now we're all in our living rooms.
Right.
My buddy Greg was right there, catty corner to me, and he was the expert on materials most of the time. So when I started there, all I had to do was turn around and be like, Greg, and like throw something at him, Greg, hey Greg, come over here, show me that sorcery,
Right.
and then he would show it to me, and I'd be like, aha, okay, and then we would keep going. Um, yeah, that is something that I do miss about developing in person for sure. But
I think I would like that. I think I would like to experience it a little bit, but also too, like
yeah,
if we're not ready as a nation to do that yet, this is
yeah,
fine too. This is comfy.
there
I'm
are
into my
pros and cons. Like,
slippers.
especially at your, if you haven't done it, I could totally see how it would be huge. I have a friend. He just actually started at high res not too long ago, and he's never been in the game industry before. His whole experience has been living in his apartment, working remotely in the game industry, and he's doing very well. And he's doing very well. However, he does express to me sort of things about like, oh man, we don't have. I kind of wanted the studio experience. I wanted to be working with guys in a creative environment and all of these things. And I totally understand, because that's how it just sort of was up until this. Um, so I do think that, there are huge positives to being in a creative environment, um, especially if you haven't done it before and you haven't gotten over it yet. Like, I personally love the remote thing. Like, I do love working with people, but at the same time, like, the at this point in my career, I'm looking at more flexibility.
Oh yeah.
I like the flexibility part of the remote working. So, I don't know how I would enjoy it if I were fresh, just working from my living room. I definitely feel like I'd be missing out, I'm sure, because I made some great friends, and there's some great stories and experiences that you really can only get if you're working with your team in a room somewhere, and you're all there at 9, 10 o'clock at night or something, and you grab wings, and now you're back at the office, and you're like, oh god, here come a couple more hours, and like, that's very real.
Well, because like I feel like we've cultured that with my friend group, right? I got a buddy who will come over here and we'll both work on like the same project from the same class, or like, hey, I'm working on this project, you're working on this, and we do that. It's like, hey man, what's up with my textures in Unreal right now? Like, why do they look so greasy? They shouldn't. There's no gloss on them. Why are they doing this? And he's like, oh, this and this. I'm like, oh, thanks. And then he's just like, hey man, what's going on? I can't sculpt on my model anymore. I'm like, oh, it's because you have this thing masked behind it that you can't see.
Yeah,
So it's just, he's like, oh man. I'm like, yeah, like just showing him like hotkeys and stuff. And it's just like that moment of like, how do you do your brushes so quickly? Oh, I know all like the key binds. He's like, you know all like the 3-letter key binds for the brushes you use? I was like, yeah, because I did that because it's like, oh, I need to be fast because I hate going click, brush,
right.
click, click, brush. And like some people, it's just that like culture is definitely like, we, the pizza nights, the things like I have had a room full of, people working, living room and stuff. And it's just like, oh, I can't wait for this to be like the professional level. But then, it's like, we'll have to see, like we got to see where we're going and stuff. So like, I guess it's like that, like, oh yeah, the fairy tale, like, oh yeah. So, but like you said, I think it's just a matter of where we're going, what we just got to be patient. I think we can't, no one can really say what's happening right now, but
Yeah, if anything
oh,
I've learned in the last 2 years is predicting the future is just really out the window. That my crystal ball does not work.
no.
So yeah, and there are a lot of places I'm seeing pop up that have in studio people again, and or they're doing some kind of mix of like half in, half out.
Okay.
Like 2 or 3 days on, 2 or 3 days off, which is interesting. We are still we're actually fully remote as a company from now on. My current
Oh,
studio, like we've decided at a few months into the pandemic, we realized like we're cranking and hitting deadlines and everyone's doing really well for the most part. So we've decided to be full-time remote as a digital studio. Um,
that's that's pretty insane that you saw that level of production, like just by let's leave people in their natural environments and just let them work, and they're like, oh man, they're actually doing better. Like, I mean,
yeah,
that's a case study. I mean, that's
yeah.
definitely something you can be like, production went up. So,
Yeah,
you
we've
know,
actually, according to the emails that we've been getting about people's overall enjoyment of work and our delivery schedule and all these things, it seems to me that people are really enjoying the the way we do it. And every team is
yeah,
sort of different. Like every day, my team has a meeting at noon. We all come on to Google Hangout. We all say what's up, give our basic rundown, and then Tuesdays and
yeah,
Thursdays we have a meeting in Discord where
hell
do
yeah,
we'll do like art critique. So we're all still kind of having interactions, and we all use Messenger anyway. So I know that some of the teams actually hang out in Discord all day. Like we have our studio Discord, and I'll see it start to fill up at around like 11 in the morning or so. Like people start showing up, and which is basically how it was when we were just in the building. People would
right.
roll in between 10 and 11. But yeah, we're making it work. People are making it
Yeah.
work.
Uh, I enjoy that a lot. I think I want to let's because sorry, hold on, let me collect my thoughts, because
No
like
problem.
I do the Discord thing and everything with my friends and stuff, and there is an art critique. We have like an art channel where we post like, hey, what do you guys think of this, what do you think of that, what could I do better here and stuff. So even though we're all learning still, we all come from different like backgrounds of that stuff. So like I'm glad that that's still cultivated in the industry. Maybe like you said, there's a little ego thing sometimes where maybe someone's like, well, I can do better than so and so or something, because you're at that professional level, but like I think it gets checked maybe.
Those types of people tend to not last. People with those egos tend to not last. You either get it burned because no matter how good you are, there's someone who is better than you. Like,
Oh yes,
no
oh
matter how
yes.
badass you are at something, you will eventually run into someone way better than you. So,
Hmm.
you know, you you really need to. That's so important to check that ego. And the
Oh
people
yeah.
who can't, I don't think that I wouldn't say I wouldn't say there's a blacklist. I don't think that that exists. Maybe once upon a time there were things like that, but I've never experienced it. But I certainly have experienced, like, man, I've worked with that guy, and he's not like excellent artist, but bedside manner is a little tough, and that is super
Oh,
important. Like, you don't ever really want to be the person who has that attached to them, because
right.
we are all a team.
Hmm.
I think that mindset comes from people who can't work together with others. Like, they think it's their show, and also a lot of it is to do with youth too, because I kind of had like my show as well when I was young, and it took
Yeah.
a long time for me to realize, like, okay, I'm on a team. I should really not be focusing on what I shouldn't be so critical of people around me when I myself really need to do a lot of work. Like, that takes up space. I think that people use that as like a distraction from what they really need to do. And what they
Mhm.
really need to do is like focus on their own issues, how to make their own art better, and to not be so critical, all the time of everybody else. Like, don't be judging so many other people. Like, if they come up and they ask you for feedback, absolutely give them everything. Work on your delivery. Sometimes sometimes too direct for some people is not good. But I think that really is something that comes just from experience, and the people who can't handle that stuff, they tend not to last. Or on the flip side, the negative side is they sometimes they're the ones who rise way up too quick, and then you're sort of like dealing with some like egomaniacal people at the management level. And I've had my fair share of those too. But you can't control other people. All you can do is work within the situation. And honestly, I've never been in an environment like that has ever succeeded. So either I walk or the project doesn't work out.
Yep.
So whenever I've had really unhealthy environments, I've either gotten myself out of there, or it has been a decision made for me because we ran out of funding, or things didn't work out, or someone got fired, or
Oh yeah.
sometimes it takes a lot. Sometimes it takes longer than others. It's kind of
Oh
amazing
yeah.
how long really unhealthy environments can go. But that unfortunately, those things come with experience.
Oh yeah. It definitely is what got me out of the Air Force.
mm,
Was those people that shouldn't have been leading were
mhm.
leading because no one ever like, yeah, maybe this person shouldn't have this much sort of thing. And I mean, like, there was a lot more going into it too, but like at the end there, they're like, oh, what can we do to keep you? I was like, not much.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
out. I'm gonna go chase a dream. They're like, well, are you gonna make it? I'm like, I don't know,
yeah.
but it's better than here.
There you
Uh,
go. That's
eh,
yeah. And are you gonna make it? It's like I'm gonna
ooh,
make. I'm gonna live life. I'm gonna live my life, and I'm gonna do everything I can to do as well as I can. And if this thing doesn't work out, something else is gonna work out. Because
absolutely.
like, what are you gonna do? Just die? What are you gonna do? Like, just lay down and stop? Like, it doesn't
I
work that way.
no. Eh,
So maybe this doesn't work. Maybe this studio doesn't work. You do it for 2 years. You realize you get a good opportunity. You go somewhere else, and that place is a nightmare. And then you get out, but you don't let it go 2 years. You cut it off at like 6 or 9 months. You know, um, Life is so many moving parts,
oh
and
yeah.
only really you can decide when you've had enough or what you really want to do. You know,
Oh yeah.
so yeah, yeah, some people definitely rise. Like, there's a personality type that rises,
Mhm.
that plays the game. And if you run into people who play the game, you got to keep a healthy distance between that person. And it's
Mhm.
easier said than done, because youth without experience, especially when you're young and you're very easily manipulated, because maybe you don't have a very firm idea of yourself, or a very clear worldview that you can kind of like judge people through.
Mhm.
um, I think it's very easy to get into really toxic situations in your youth, and I
Yeah.
certainly experienced a number of them.
Mhm.
But that comes, discernment comes from experience and maturity, and going through those things. Like, I can't say that you're never going to have a bad toxic boss. Like, you probably will, but
Oh yeah.
you just got to make the best of it, and then
Hell
and
yeah.
vote with your feet. Like, if
Mhm.
it's really bad, you
Feet, I
you
like
put
that.
you put your portfolio together, you update your resume, and you start firing it out. Hopefully
Mhm.
you've made good networks, you made good connections, you got buddies at other studios, and you say, hey, I saw you're looking for a 3D artist. Here's my resume. Let's talk. Is there a possibility you could put this on your art director's desk? And Yeah. Sometimes,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you win some, you lose some, you know?
Right. Um, and I'll say this. I'm glad that you said about the game because that was something that I would like preach to some of my airmen and stuff. It was like they're like, man, it sucks here. I'm like, look, there's a game. You can play the game and you can get by fine. And it's passive and you just do the thing and it's a game. It's a game. You know the rules of the game. You don't you win, and the game is speaking how to handle this person, how to do with this and do this and
Mhm.
this. And it's not fun.
No.
It's not this like, oh, this is the way to be. It's like it feels scummy, it feels disingenuine. But you can do that, or you can spend your time here, get your college, get your skills, and go live life.
Mhm.
But if you want to do that, you can do that. And that's the thing. They're like, oh, I was like, I don't like doing it. I don't want to do it. I only do it to get by on the daily where
Right.
it's just like, I don't deal with this guy, but I deal with this guy and where we're gonna go because that's the plan. So like I was just like, as soon as you said that, I was like, I like you, Patrick. You're good people.
I do what I can, man.
Right? And so let's take it back from the industry stuff. I want to know like what was it that got you into games? Like what was the moment, like I mean, was it just always art, or did you always have like a love for games, or was it like oh man, I really like doing this? Was it ever like I always tell people, it's like, they spark joy in me. I want to do the same thing for other people.
Right.
And that's,
Little
I
Marie
started,
Kondo there.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. Man. So I was always an artist. Like when I was a kid, I've been drawing and painting ever since I could pick up a crayon. Um, I knew very early in my life that I wanted to dedicate it to art. I wanted to do something that was art related. I really didn't like, had you asked me when I was going to college that I would be in video games, I would have said, I don't know. I didn't really have that direct focus, even though I did go to a video game program for college, but that
Mhm.
was because they gave me a scholarship.
Okay.
So I applied to a ton of art schools and I went to go see them and I was trying to figure out where I was going to go, but I couldn't afford any of them. There was
Mhm.
no way. I didn't have any clue how I would be able to do it. And then the school in LA, I was actually mentioning that to the entrance guy, and he's like, "Well, we do have some scholarship programs. Why don't you apply for them?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's amazing." So my senior year of high school, or maybe it was junior year or something like that, I filled out this huge thing, did a bunch of pieces of art, applied it, actually got a scholarship. Took care of enough of the school that I could figure out how to pay the rest. And I moved to LA to be in art. And I grew up playing video games, Super Nintendo, and
Hell yeah.
I remember my grandfather got me a NES for I think my 5th or 6th birthday, and
Mhm.
like I was really into it as a kid. And then I started getting into online games in about 1999. I played
Okay.
this game called EverQuest.
All right. Yeah,
It was
yeah,
the
yeah.
first 3D MMO, and it blew my mind. It was basically like 3D D&D, and I was just really blown away. And it's what really got me into doing art for video games. I went to college. I knew I wanted to make games like that. I knew I wanted to work on MMOs. I almost did work on EverQuest once, and then I almost worked on this game called Vanguard, which was made by the ex developers. There was a company called Sigil Games Online in San Diego.
Okay.
In 2005, I failed the interview for that job, and
Oh.
yeah, it was a bummer. But I still managed to get my start in games, and I like I was always told like, oh, characters are tough, and that's a real bad plan, and all of these things. And I'm a very like, I'm not the person like you tell me not to do something and I'm going to do it. So it has its pluses and its minuses. It's gotten me in a lot of trouble, but it's also kept me, it's also kept me pretty successful because, when you tell me I can't do something I want to do, it just really makes me want to figure it out myself. So,
Mhm.
I put in the time. I graduated from school with a portfolio full of like MMO res characters. They were terrible, but they were good enough. They were good enough to get a job doing basically like prop modeling
Okay.
and fixing models that were coming in through outsourcing for Activision. So I learned the basics, doing like being a glorified intern basically for about a year, and then I was able to get a job doing character props through my job at Activision. I went from the Central Art Studio to Neversoft, the Tony Hawk
Okay.
company.
Hell yeah.
And I worked on Tony Hawk for maybe a year or so, just making shoes and watches and hats, really basic stuff. Very junior artist level stuff, but it was the path, and I had to
Oh
grind
yeah.
it out. And then the thing is also, I never stopped making characters that I was interested in my spare time.
Right.
So it may have taken a lot longer because I was working all day, and doing more art in the evening is very challenging. But I was able to build a side portfolio of fantasy creatures and stuff, and I got a job Warhammer Online.
Oh,
And I
nice.
finally got the opportunity to work on an MMO. Warhammer's awesome. Like, I'm a huge Warhammer fan, so it was like it was beautiful. It worked out. The only thing is I had to move across the country, so
Hmm.
that was a little weird. That was a bit of
Yeah.
an extra step, but we moved. I moved out to DC, and then I worked on Warhammer for 2 years. And uh,
That's
through that job, I got so much experience. Like, it blew my mind how much how different my view and my experience level was when I left the company. And then all of that experience just built on top of it, and I got another job working on MMOs, doing these kids games when I lived in Texas, these Wizard 101 and Pirate 101. I was basically, my first art lead job was on Pirate 101. I wasn't the official lead, but I basically did most of the art on the,
oh hell yeah.
the first run of characters. I helped set up the part system. I helped set up the tinting system, as well as like the way the characters, like the models would swap. So like I learned how atlasing and how MMO armor systems worked when I worked on Warhammer. And then when I worked on Pirate, they wanted to level up all of the units, but we had to figure out a way to level them up without all of these extra draw calls, because it was such a low res game, and the tech bar was super low. So we were
Right.
trying to figure out how we could take these characters and make them look cool and different as they leveled up, without all of the extraneous systems and brand new models for everything. So then that started getting me thinking more tech oriented and pipeline oriented. And then that actually got me the experience level I needed to actually be a lead. And then I went to work at EA in San Francisco
Mhm.
on this game called Dawngate. And
Oh
Dawngate was
yeah.
a MOBA that was trying to come up at the same time all these other MOBAs. League of Legends was fresh. Dota 2 was coming out.
Hmm.
The game I work on, Smite, right now, and they were just in their fledgling stages at the time.
Yeah.
And EA wanted to do their own MOBA. So I was the only 3D artist on that project. Like, I got hot for the first year. I did all the characters, all the skins, and a lot of the environment props. Like, I did
Man.
basically everything, and I was working like round the clock. It was awesome, but also, not healthy, I think.
Ooh.
But it got me in the position that I wanted to be in. I wanted to be sort of a lead. I wanted to have that level of responsibility and have my mark. So like, it was just whatever I made was in the game. Like that's basically how it worked. So it was the closest thing to like basically like a garage studio as you could get, but we were in, you know, the Redwood City EA building. So I'd walk by,
Right.
like, you know, they were doing Dead Space 3 at the time, and we were doing like all of these crazy high tier productions. And then like in the back, in the little corner in the back was like me and like 20 other people trying to get this MOBA off the ground. And it was really an amazing experience. And that gave me a bunch of experience. Then I wound up working on some another MMO, and then going to Disney for a little bit to try to get a mobile game off the ground. And then where did I go after that? I went to Seattle to work at an art house, and I worked on a number of different character games from like as a contractor, basically. Like the studio, I was a full-time artist, but the studio would get contracts. So sometimes I'd be working on this and sometimes I'd be working on that. And then after that, you know, my resume from doing MOBAs and MMOs and all that, not so much MMOs, but MOBAs really got me the gig here at High Res. And I've just been making, you know, character skins for the most part for Smite for almost 4 years now. So
Hell yeah.
yeah, that's basically how we got here. I never really thought I would, you know, when I was a kid, I wouldn't have told you that I would be working in video games. You know, I just knew I needed to be creative in some way. I needed to use my skill set because, you know, it was so much a part of my life as a kid. You know, I would do all sorts of art for myself, for my friends. You know, I did all the band logos and the album covers for the bands I was in. You know, like I was that guy. And it just felt like, well, I've been blessed with this ability. You know, why?
Right.
Who knows why I can do these things? I felt that if I didn't work on it and develop it, I would be cheating myself, basically. Like, you know, it's like some people are good at math, some people are good with numbers, some people are good with money. I'm good at making things. So
Right.
I'm gonna have to, you know, I'm gonna have to make this work some way. And I didn't want to be a starving artist. You know, I didn't want to be living in a loft eating paint. So,
Yep.
you know, that didn't sound that nice.
No, but I feel that because
Yeah.
I didn't want to do the traditional art thing. I tried. I went to school back in like 09, and they only had traditional art classes. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do this. But that was like what they were selling. You're either going to be an art teacher or you're going to be starving artist. And I'm like, why?
Yeah. Why?
I
Yeah.
mean, teaching is something that I think about. I think about how important it is to give back, much like, you know, this. So like that's always been a thing, like, you know, oh, maybe I do this for X amount of years and then I, you know, like go into teaching it, you know, just to say, hey, you know, like it's something a little passion of mine, but like, yeah, that whole like, no, I get it. Like you make great art, but like at what cost? Like,
Oh yeah. But you
dude,
know, it's for some people. You
yeah.
know,
Oh
some
yeah.
people they just want to live that life, maybe not forever, but they want to try it. You know, like I was a tattoo artist for a little while. I wanted to try it. It wasn't for me, you know, but I'm glad that I tried.
Yeah.
I've done design, you know, graphic design. I don't really like it, but I tried, you know, like I think that anything you don't try, you'll never know. So you may as well give it a shot. It doesn't mean you got to be married to it. You
Right.
know, you just, if you think you can do it and you give it a shot and you don't like it, you know, we're not serfs, you know, like we're not
Right.
stuck to the land. Like we can make our own decisions and
Oh
be like,
yeah.
okay, this worked for a while. I'm gonna just figure something else out. And for whatever reason, video games just clicked. I was able to develop my skill set in an environment where I could do the work. And especially in the days of the MMO craze, like in the early 2000s, there were so many job opportunities because it took so many people to make these huge worlds that I got a great opportunity to just start making this stuff. And then people wanted to make MMOs. They're looking for people who know how to do them.
Hell yeah.
And then MOBAs became a thing. I got in on the MOBA train, that people are still making these sorts of games. So, the experience, it just piles up, and gives you more options. And like you said, the teaching thing, like when, you reached out, I love being able to be a resource for people who do the work, who go out and they're like, okay, hey, I'd like to ask you questions. Like, you're doing the work, like you're doing what you need to do to get to where you want to be. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Like I think it's very respectable, because people don't, people, they dream, they live in their head, but that's great because that's where it starts, but it's applying, it's action, it's through doing that is where you're gonna get the success that you want.
It's like, yes, what is it for an assignment? Yeah, but I'm gaining more by doing it personally and like asking you these questions and reaching out, because they could have given me someone, like, oh, ask
Yeah.
this person. It's like, no, I like this guy's work and I'm gonna ask him. And then it's been very eye-opening. It's been inspiring too, because it's like, okay, you're not so off the path. You are doing correct things and stuff. Uh, you like Warhammer. I like Warhammer.
Oh yeah.
I've got
Love that Iron Maiden poster in the background you got
thank
there.
you.
Excellent.
I'm all about old metal, just metal,
Mm-hmm.
80s synthwave music. I'm
Oh
everywhere,
yeah, yeah, I like that stuff too.
um, so like it's just like, okay, all right, like it definitely like, because then I also feel like it's such a weird thing, right? It's like, how do you reach out to someone who's doing what you want to do? And I'm like, you just got to do it. Like I asked my friend, hey, does this sound professional enough? And then you were just like, you were completely chill about your responses. And I'm like, how do I sound chill, but also professional at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
And it just was like, I was like, awesome. That's a good word. We'll lead with that. And because it's just, it's intimidating. It is. I'd
Sure,
be honest.
yeah,
I was a little
absolutely.
nervous, like reaching out. I feel way more comfortable, and it's just been a wonderful time speaking with you. Um, you've really answered everything. I mean, like, the only thing I can really ask at this point is, if I ever needed to, or if you were up for it, could I send you some work and then get some critique on it? Like, hey, you're missing some of this, you're missing that. Like, I know you're leading teams and stuff. I don't want to like steal your time all the way or flood you with stuff. So like I just, if I have as many resources as possible to grow my skills, like
Yeah,
um
man. I mean, if I have the time, I will be more than happy to help out. You
yeah.
know, um, I can't guarantee I'll always be this free that I
Oh
am
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
morning, but like, yeah, I looked at your work through ArtStation when you sent me the message, and you have competent stuff. Like I saw the dragon and the turtle and the I think that was Slash, that
Yeah.
Teenage Ninja Turtle guy. Like I'm like, okay, yeah, he's got some models up here. He's reaching out, asking for questions. Like, absolutely.
Sweet. I appreciate that very much. And thank you for taking a look. I didn't expect that. Like I was like, yeah, he's gonna look at my stuff and like go through it with a comb or anything, because like there's still some stuff I want to post. I
Sure.
just haven't got there. We're working on a low poly character now that, depending on where I get it, I might post it. I like it, but it was one of those things of like, yeah, I drew the concept but it's like, is my concept strong? It's like, I made what I drew, but is it like, some people are like, oh, that's super rad. I'm like, you're my family, so you're supposed to say that. Like, is it,
Yeah.
like,
So,
so
well, I think that there is actually a whole lot of positive to getting that feedback, even though they are your family.
mhm.
They don't want to, they don't want to hurt your feelings. Ideally, I would assume that,
Right.
I would hope that your parents, or family would be supportive. But something that regular non-artist people, if you do show them work, like, they will have things about it to say that maybe you didn't even consider, because when you think about what we're making, we're making things that regular folks are going to be buying, or interacting with, and what's appealing to them is not always what's appealing to you, or they'll see things that are like things you didn't even consider. Like a lot of times it comes down like hands, people who are not artists can identify like something's off with your hands, something's off with some of these features. There's something like a little weird about it. They may not know how to describe it, but maybe if they just gave you a general piece of feedback, you could break it down based off of what they said. So I do think that there is a lot of benefits in getting feedback from all sources, because most of the people who play video games are not game artists. Most people who play video games are just regular folks, who need, want some entertainment. So I think it's kind of one of those things, because even I fall into this where I think I know what they'll like. I'm like, this isn't going to work, or this is going to, this is a way better idea than this. I can't believe we're making this. And it sells super well. And it's like, what do I know? Like
Right.
Sometimes it's just like, all right, if they love it, then excellent,
Right. Oh man, there's some like, just even like Smite, there's some skins where I'm like, oh, that's super rad. And then someone's like, I'm like, no, I would, if it came up in the one loot chest, there's some things where I'm like, I don't know how to get this.
Yeah.
Like, but there's definitely like that taste, right? For some people, they really love this skin or they really love this character model, so they go and they play that character. They don't care how the character plays. They just want to play that character, and I feel that, because like I would have never have even thought about playing as Chalk. I'm like, I like Aztec stuff. That's cool. But then that skin, I was like, I'm getting that hero. I'm gonna get that skin. And I'm not even trying to give you the rub right now. Like I was like, that is why. The Mothman. Oh man, I haven't played it in a minute.
Pause 1 second. I'm getting.
Yeah, dude. No worries.
I don't recall exactly what we were talking about.
I was just saying, because I just thought about it. I even like went ahead and like a Muzen Cobb, his Mothman skin, totally got that. And bees, I think that's a kind of cool gimmick. Like, oh, he shoots bees at you. This is phenomenal.
Yeah, I did an AMC skin. I did that plague one where he's got like he's got like he's like all purple and gold, and he's got the weapon that has the chainsaw blade on it. He's like he's kind of steampunk looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did
That's
that one.
rad too. What? Man, that's not on your art station, is it?
No, because they changed something on it. So the final thing got changed by another artist, and I don't know how particular they are about like the change, because it was like the design. I guess the design, they thought the one that I made was like the whole skin is the same except for the face mask. They changed the face mask. So I haven't posted it. I don't know if people are particular about it. I may put it up one of these days, because I liked how it turned out with the old mask, but who knows?
Yeah, because like looking at the splash art, like, yeah, that would be sick to model. He looks rad. I enjoy. Yeah, I was gonna say I could sit there and be like, oh, dude, like, gushing over your work. I'm just a fan. So like,
thank you, man.
It makes me want to like, well, I could get a game in tonight in between things. But I guess if you had any advice for me that we haven't already covered, what would you say for me? I've got about 2 years left of school, working on my portfolio. What kind of advice would you give for me moving forward as far as, gaining that sort of like job and like experience, and like what should not what should I be focusing on, but like from as a senior character artist, and I want to be where you're at someday. What advice can you give to me?
Never stop learning, never stop creating stuff. look for opportunities where they show up. Like you never know when a great opportunity will appear, and it may not always look like a great opportunity. A lot of times they don't, they're not so obvious. It's not obvious that you're gonna get into a job that it's gonna make a huge difference in your career or in your life or something. So stay open to these sorts of things. Don't be afraid to move jobs. Don't think that you need, like, because you got a job and you've only been there a year, you can't get a different one. I know some people, they feel like they're very tied to the studio. Oh, they gave me this opportunity, I shouldn't leave, and all of these things, and they put up with stuff they don't like. I totally understand the mindset of appreciating the opportunities, but you got to live your life. And if going to work every day if there are issues, that's really important for you to say, like, okay, I love this art director. We're great friends. He gave me an awesome opportunity, but there are some issues here that I just can't handle. Or I got this great opportunity. This whole new opportunity just popped out of nowhere. No one is going to, hold a grudge as long as you leave on good terms. As long as you go through the process and get the opportunity, and then go to your art director and be like, hey man, it's hard for me to say this, but we have to part. I got this great opportunity, and I've decided to take it. He'll probably say congratulations. Like unless he's one of those people we were talking about earlier, and then and that's probably why you want to bail in the first place. Right. So having just keeping open to opportunities, and not feeling like you're locked anywhere. Because if you do really good work and people get along with you well, and you leave on good terms, there's no reason why you couldn't go back there in the future if an opportunity arose. Like when you leave a place, you really aren't closing the door forever, because 3 years later they might be doing a new game with almost an entirely new staff, and you may have a couple of guys who are still there, and they might put in a good word for you, and you wind up working there again. I've known plenty of people who have left studios for a year or two and then come back as different positions, and then left again. It's not unheard of, and I know a lot of people, they hold themselves back a lot because of all sorts of things that they think they need to do. Like they think, oh, I owe all these people this, or I owe all these people that, and I can't just leave, or how bad will that look? And I think that's all just anxiety, because at the end of the day, people don't remember, oh, he left after a year. They remember, oh, that guy was fun to work with. Right. 2 years later, oh, we're going to remember that he was a good guy and fun to work with. And hey, you remember, Ryan, he's applying again. Like, that's what people really remember if they're healthy people. Right. If you're healthy and you're one of the, if you have those things going for you, that's a place you want to work too. Like, you don't want to work with the guy who holds the grudge because, like you got a job at a place that he wanted to go to or something, like that's right. That exists. Don't get me wrong. Like that's totally real. Damn. But it's not, I don't think it's very common, okay. I've never been in a position where I didn't feel like I could reach out to one of my old coworkers and, see what they're doing, see if they needed somebody. I've gotten a number of opportunities through people that I know. So yeah. It's like network, be a good employee, be a good coworker, try to just be one of the, fun to work with, and, don't burn any bridges if you don't have to. Like sometimes you get into really, sometimes these situations, they creep up on you and you don't even realize what you're in at the time. Like sometimes it happens, and a lot of, you can't really avoid some things, but, just try to always be respectful, be professional, and advocate for yourself. Because yeah. I think the days of like someone working for a company for their life, those are very rare. Even like, I don't even think they ever existed in entertainment, but if they ever did, they're very rare. Most companies don't even last that long. Like if you're at a mid-level company, if they make, a lot of companies are one bad game away from closing the doors. So at that point, you could be the most loyal employee, but if they don't have money, they're not going to be able to keep you, like.
Yeah.
So if you get whiff of things are going south and you can advocate for yourself and you can get out before those types of things happen, I'd recommend doing it. Like that just comes from experience. That just comes from, doing it for a while. But, never think that you're ever stuck anywhere. You can always look for other opportunities. And also layoffs are very real. So don't never take a layoff as like the end of the world. Like, always prepare, have a little money saved aside and have a plan if these sorts of things happen. But they're a very real part of the industry. No one's trying to lay you off. But if you can get out before it happens, or if it does happen to you, you just pick yourself up and you dust yourself off, put the resume together and try again. And just like with art, keep making new art, and eventually you'll start pruning the old stuff off, because every piece of art you're going to do is going to be better than the last one, ideally. And then, every studio and every project you work on should be, better than the last in some ways.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, just don't give up. Keep on the grind. And if you're actively doing it, if you're actively putting yourself out there and applying for things and gathering up experience and these sorts, then you'll make it eventually,
Absolutely. No, like if I needed any sort of pick me up, this was it today. Thank you
Right
so
on,
much. Because like I said, I just hit a wall on a project that I wasn't, and it's like, oh man. And then I was like, well, I've got this in the morning. Let's get up, let's do the thing. And it's just been very much like, let's reignite that. Let's get this done. Let's not keep this on. And a layoff got me to this point. A layoff got me to, well, I'm gonna go do something with my life or join the military. Figured out that wasn't for me, and so I'm with you. Like it's not the end of the world. It opens the new thing, and it's kind of, I look back to that a lot. I'm like, when that happened, I was like, I'm done with this, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like one job and another job and another that I didn't like, and then it was like, all right, let's just do the thing that's gonna suck for a minute, get us to where we need to be, and let's go. Let's do the thing that you want to do. And I didn't know what I wanted to do until I started doing this, and then I was like, oh, you can do this. You should do this. So it's
There you
like,
go.
but I appreciate your time. I think you said at noon you've got to meet with your team.
I do. Yes, I do. In
So
about 7 minutes, I got my daily stand up.
I want to just thank you again for your time, for your wisdom, knowledge, everything. I appreciate so very much. Thank you again and again. Like I said, I don't expect this a lot. Like I'm not gonna be, oh, hey Patrick, you want to sit on Zoom for 2 hours? But I definitely appreciate having that open communication. Let me work on some things and I'll send them, or I'll post them on ArtStation and stuff. And just once again, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you and the rest of the team at High Res have a great day.
Thank you, man.
I hope the apartment stuff comes well.
Oh yes, we'll figure. Yeah, it'll work out one way or the other. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, man. I'm glad that you reached out. I'm glad I could be happy or helpful. I know that I needed as much as I could get when I was trying to get into this. There are some people in the industry who helped me out immeasurably. So, I feel very important to give back. And if you really enjoyed this, let your professors or your dean know. I'm totally happy to talk to your class if that's something that they would be interested in doing. So, I'm a resource. I may not always be able to get back or give you all my attention, but if I can, I will definitely be around to help you out, man.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. I don't know how the recordings work. Do you just send them to me?
Uh, let me just, I